The belt of truth is the first weapon listed in our armor of God. But when the disciples asked Jesus, what will be the signs of the last days? God answers them and says, see to it that you are not deceived, which means deception is off the charts in the last days. The problem is that very few people realize that deception will also extend into the church and perhaps into our eschatological view. As I look around, very few people actually see who Jesus is coming back for, or who he will fight against, and why. So my intentions today is to get you to look at the last days in a different perspective. My perspective goes against many prophecy experts, and this is just for your consideration. This presentation is not to shake you up, but to wake you up. The truth is what sets you free, and my intention is to prepare you for the battle ahead. The end of the Bible must match up with the beginning of the Bible, and it does. I believe that the covenant in Genesis 15 is pivotal to the last days, and I want to explain how and why. After this, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your great reward. But Abram said, Sovereign Lord, what can you give me since I remain childless, and the one who will inherit my estate is Eliezer of Damascus? And Abram said, You have given me no children, so a servant in my household will be my heir. Then the word of the Lord came to him, This man will not be your heir, but a son, who is your own flesh and blood, will be your heir. He took him outside and said, Look up at the sky and count the stars, if indeed you can count them. Then he said to him, So shall your offspring be. Abram believed the Lord, and he credited it to him as righteousness. He said to him, I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land and take possession of it. But Abram said, Sovereign Lord, how can I know that I will gain possession of it? So the Lord said to him, Bring me a heifer, a goat, and a ram, each 3 years old, along with a dove and a pigeon. Abram brought all these to him, cut them into two, and arranged the halves opposite of each other. The birds, however, he did not cut in half. Then birds of prey came down to the carcass, but Abram drove them away. As the sun was setting, Abram fell into a deep sleep. This is important. And a thick and dreadful darkness came over him. Then the Lord said to him, Know for certain that for 400 years your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own, and they will be enslaved and mistreated there. But I will punish the nation that will serve as slaves, and afterwards they will come out with great possessions. You, however, will go to your ancestors in peace and be buried at a good old age. In the 4th generation your descendants will come back here, for the sin of the Amorites has not yet reached its full measure. When the sun had set and darkness had fallen, a smoking firepot with a blazing torch appeared and passed between the pieces. On that day the Lord made a covenant with Abram and said, To your descendants I give this land, from the Wadi of Egypt to the great river Euphrates. In Isaiah 62 verse 1, it says, For Zion's sake I will not keep silent. For Jerusalem's sake I will not remain quiet, till her vindication shines out like the dawn, her salvation like a blazing torch. God is taking Israel back to the covenant that he made, where he was a blazing torch that passed between the animals. Now, in Genesis 15, I want to remind you of these things to take away. Abraham's faith was credited as righteousness. Abraham was put into a deep sleep, signifying that this covenant is only based on the faithfulness of God, not on Abraham. This is important. There's nothing Abraham can do to break this promise of God's. It is a blood covenant over a specific territory of land, and God himself moved through the animals. Now, the severing of the bodies of the animals was to set up the penalty of perjury, and was usually accompanied by the implications by the covenant breaker of a destruction as complete as that which had befallen the slaughtered animals. So in essence, God is saying, if I don't fulfill this covenant, let this destruction befall on me. And since he's the only one that entered into the covenant, he's the only one that can break the covenant. Now, God has enemies, and if God's enemies want to try to destroy him, how would they do this? Well, there's only two ways. To break this covenant, you have to either take the land, and that has happened 7 times in history, where Satan attempted to take the land away from the Jews. And you will see that in Revelations 13 in the beast. The beast has 7 heads. Those heads represent the 7 attempts that Satan has tried to break this covenant. They never lasted for long. God always either raised up a deliverer or there was something that happened. But the other way to break the covenant is to kill those who will inherit the promise, which is the Jews, which we saw all throughout history. Pharaoh, Haman, Black Plagues, pogroms, Holocaust, and in the future you're going to see the days of Jacob's trouble. Now, God has enemies, and Dr. Michael Heiser speaks on this in his book, Supernatural. He goes over Psalms 82, and 82:1 reads, God presides in the heavenly council, in the assemblies of the gods, he gives his decision, small g. 82, 6 through 8, he says, I said, you are small gods, small g, you are all sons of the Most High, but you will die like mere mortals. You will fall like every other ruler. Rise up, O God, judge the earth, for every nation is your inheritance. Now, Ephesians 6:12 also validates this. It says, we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in heavenly places. We are at war because our Father is at war. And this war is fought in two realms, the seen and the unseen. That spiritual warfare leads us to Revelations 12, verse 1 through 6, where it says, a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. This is the nation of Israel. Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on its head. Its tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to the earth. The dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth, so that it might devour her child the moment he was born. When did that actually happen? That was when Herod tried to kill all of the babies in Bethlehem, hoping to get the Messiah. Now, the reason why I bring that up is because principalities use kings and kingdoms, and that's going to be important as we look at the things that I'm going to explain to you. She, Israel, gave birth to a son, a male child who will rule all the nations with an iron scepter. And her child, Jesus, was snatched up to God and to his throne, where he is right now. Then we skip ahead. The woman, Israel, Jerusalem, the Jews, fled into the wilderness to a place prepared for her by God where she might be taken care of for 1,260 days. We know this is during the times of Jacob's trouble. When they are actually invaded, God himself will come. There's 1,260 days that he provides an area for half of the Jews. The other half will go into exile. They'll be killed by the sword, or they will flee into the neighboring countries. When Jesus comes back, he's the cloud rider. He comes on a cloud riding into Egypt. Why? Because he will be the greater deliverer than Moses was. Everybody had a foreshadowing in the Bible of Jesus when he returns. Whether it's King David, Moses, Gideon, they all have some aspect that the Savior is going to show when he comes back. Now, in the book Supernatural by Dr. Michael Heiser, he speaks on 3 historical transgressions. 1, man in the Garden of Eden. It's where divine and human coexisted and man fell. 2, Genesis 6, where the watchers or the sons of God were trying to reformulate Eden, where the divine and the human coexisted in their own way without God's permission. And 3, the Tower of Babel. Now, this surprised me, but this was very interesting. God wanted humanity to cover the earth and a relationship with humanity. But the rebellion at Babel changed that. God decided to let members of his divine council govern the other nations. Now, I never knew this until Michael Heiser pointed this out. But in Deuteronomy 32, 8 through 9, it says, when the Most High gave to the nations their inheritance, when he divided mankind, he fixed the borders of the peoples according to the number of the sons of God. But the Lord's portion is his people, Jacob, his allotted heritage. So God allotted the nations to the members of his divine council. This is the Bible's explanation for why other nations came to worship other gods, small g, false gods, and why his council is judged in Psalms 82. Until Babel, God wanted a relationship with all humanity, but the rebellion at Babel changed that. God decided to let members of his divine council govern the other nations. So God decided to create a new nation, his portion, as Deuteronomy 32:9 says, Israel. He did this beginning with the call of Abraham in Genesis 12. The very next chapter after the Tower of Babel story was when God made his covenant with Abraham. He made clear that all the families on the earth will be blessed through Abraham and his offspring. God was planning to bring the nations back into his family at some point, and that is fulfilled through an heir of Abraham. That is why the genealogy of Jesus is so important. That spiritual warfare, I believe, leads us to Islam. Now, we know that Abraham had 2 main children, and he had many more after Sarah passed away, but Isaac and Ishmael are his 2 main that the Bible talks about. We know that Isaac, through the Bible, was the son of promise, the line that God was going to repair, and the promise was 2, that all nations would be blessed through Isaac. And through that, King David, who was the king of the Jews, and we get Jesus. And that's why Jesus' genealogy is so important, because that is the line that was promised. That is how God was going to restore the kingdoms and the nations back to him, was through the blood of Jesus Christ. Through his atonement, anyone can come to God through Jesus. But in Islam, the story changes. 600 years after Jesus was taken up, Satan had a plan. Through Ishmael, in Islam, it is alluded that Ishmael is the son that was sacrificed, not Isaac. Now, this is not a small claim. If Isaac is not the son of promise, then Jesus is not the promised Messiah. And that is exactly where Islam takes it. Then Muhammad becomes the warrior king like David, and the Messiah in Islam is being awaited to come out of his line. He is the last caliph, that's the office of the caliphate, or the last kingdom. So in Islam, they believe that the caliphate has to come back for the caliph to rule, and the final caliph would be Imam Mahdi, who is their awaited savior. When Mahdi comes back, he is joined by another man whose name is Isa al-Masih. He's the Muslim Jesus. He looks like he would be the false prophet, and the Mahdi would be our Antichrist. And the two of them together fight someone who's called Ad-Dajjal. Now that's the Muslim Antichrist, but to the Christian, it looks like our Savior, Jesus Christ, coming back, because this person will claim to be God and will be followed by Jews and women. So in Islam, everything is reversed in the end times. That is why I think this is so important, this teaching, because it's going to give you another aspect of spiritual warfare and how the end could happen. In Genesis 22:2, it says, "Then God said, take your son, your only son," that's very strong language there, "whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you." I think God was sending a clear message that Isaac is the son of promise, not Ishmael. In Genesis 21:10, Sarah said to Abraham, "Cast out this slave woman and her son." And in Genesis 21:13, we see Ishmael was called the son of a slave woman, not the son of Abraham after the expulsion. Now, all three prophets concur that Ishmael is not in the lineage. In Exodus 3:15 says, "Yahweh, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob." Jeremiah, the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And in Matthew, "I am the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob." But if you go over to the Quran, on the Medina revelation, it says, Quran 2 and chapter 3 also says, "Which was revealed unto Abraham and Ishmael and Isaac and Jacob and the tribes." And then further in the Quran it says, "We inspired Abraham and Ishmael and Isaac and Jacob and the tribes." This adding of Ishmael in the Quran legitimizes the lie that Ishmael is the child of promise. It confuses the other descendants of Abraham, and it gives them legitimacy over the land, which is going to play an important role in the last days. Malachi 1. "I loved Jacob, but Esau I hated." This is a divine revelation. The Lord spoke his word to Israel through Malachi. "I loved you," says the Lord, "but you ask, how did you love us? Wasn't Esau Jacob's brother, declares the Lord? I loved Jacob, but Esau I hated. I turned his mountains into a wasteland and left his inheritance to the jackals in the desert." The descendants of Esau may say, "We have been beaten down, but we will rebuild the ruins." Yet this is what the Lord of armies says, "They may rebuild, but I will tear it down. They will be called the wicked land and the people with whom the Lord is always angry. You will see these things with your own eyes and say, even outside the border of Israel, the Lord is great." In Genesis 28:9, it says, "Then went Esau unto Ishmael, and took unto the wives which he had Mahalath, the daughter of Ishmael, Abraham's son, the sister of Nebaioth, to be his wife." Now when Esau heard of his blessing and the sending away of Jacob, and saw therein the displeasure of his parents at his Hittite wives, he went to Ishmael, to the family of Ishmael, for Ishmael himself had been dead 14 years, and took a third wife, Mahalath, a daughter of Ishmael, a step by which he may no doubt ensure the approval of his parents, but in which he failed to consider that Ishmael had been separated from the house of Abraham and the family of the promise by the appointment of God, so that it only furnished another proof that he had no thought of the religious interests of the chosen family, and was unfit to be the recipient of divine revelation. Now, I bring this up because the word Arab means mixture, and Esau mixed lines with Ishmael, who was an Egyptian, and Abraham would have other sons after Sarah died, and they would all intermarry. It means mixture. Joshua 24:3-4 says, "But I took your father Abraham from the land beyond the river and led him throughout Canaan and gave him many descendants. I gave him Isaac, and to Isaac I gave Jacob and Esau. I assigned the hill country of Seir to Esau, but Jacob and his son went down to Egypt." Mount Seir runs between the Red Sea port of Aqaba up to the bottom of the Dead Sea. It is part of Edom. In Ezekiel 25, the territory of Edom is seen to be stretched beyond Seir, down into Arabia, as far as Dedan. Isaiah 63:1-7 says this, "Who is that cometh from Edom with dyed garments from Bozrah, that is glorious in his apparel, traveling in the greatness of his strength? I that speak in righteousness, mighty to save. Wherefore art thou red in thy apparel, and thy garments like him that treadeth the wine fat? I have trodden the winepress alone, and of the people there was none with me. I will tread them in my anger, and trample them in my fury, and their blood shall be sprinkled upon my garments, and I will stain all my remnants. For the day of vengeance is in my heart, and the year of my redeemed is come. And I looked, and there was no one to help, and I wondered that there was none to uphold me. Therefore my own arm brought salvation unto me, and my fury it upheld me. And I will tread down the people in my anger, and make them drunk in my fury, and I will bring them down the strength to the earth. I will mention the loving kindness of the Lord and the praises of the Lord according to all that the Lord hath bestowed on us, and the great goodness towards the house of Israel, which he hath bestowed on them according to his mercies and according to the multitude of his loving kindness." The Lord said, this is the land that he is always angry with, and he himself, when he comes back, will tread them, their bodies, and sprinkle their blood on their garments for Israel's sake. Why does he do this? Why is there vengeance in his heart? For his time of redemption has come. Why does he do this on Israel's behalf? Remember, most people are looking for the lamb to return. You need to be looking for the lion. He is not on the side of humanity when he comes back. He's on the side of covenant. Why? Because all hell will be trying to break this covenant in the last days, because it is the only way that they can take down God. This is it. This is the climax at the end times. This is the motive. This is why Jesus is so angry, and this is why it's so important for you to stand on the side of Israel. If you remember in Genesis 15, I said that there was two ways to break the covenant that God put his life down for. The first was to take the land away from the Jews. In Revelation 13, we see a sea beast. Out of that, there's 7 heads and a body. The 7 heads, I believe, is the 7 attempts where Satan has tried to take the land away from the Jews and was successful. Egypt was the first, then it was Assyria, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome was the 6th, and the 7th is the Ottoman Empire. The body of the beast is very significant. It looks like the lion, the leopard, and the bear. The Lord is telling you location. This is where the final beast kingdom is going to come out of. And it's my belief that the final beast head suffered a head wound and is going to come back and reform. So we need to be looking for the lion, the leopard, and the bear. Let me explain further. In Daniel 7, there are 4 beasts that come out of the sea. We know that the first 3 are Babylon, Medo-Persia, and Greece. But the 4th has always been told that it's Rome. I'm going to make an argument here for the Ottoman Empire. We will look at Daniel's interpretation from the angel on the next slide. I, Daniel, was troubled in spirit, and the visions that passed through my mind disturbed me. I approached one of those standing there and asked him the meaning of all this. So he told me and gave me the interpretation of these things. The 4 great beasts are 4 kings that will rise from the earth, but the holy people of the Most High, which would be the Jews, will receive the kingdom and will possess it forever, yes, forever and ever. Then I wanted to know the meaning of the 4th beast, which was different from all the others and most terrifying, with its iron teeth and bronze claws, the beast that crushed and devoured its victims and trampled underfoot whatever was left. I also wanted to know about the 10 horns horns on its head and about the other horn that came up, before which 3 of them fell. The horn that looked more imposing than the others, that had the eyes of the mouth that spoke boastfully. As I watched, this horn was waging war against the holy people, the Jews, and defeating them. This would be Jacob's trouble, until the Ancient of Days came and pronounced judgment in favor of the holy people of the Most High, and the time came when they possessed the kingdom. He gave me this explanation. The 4th beast is a 4th kingdom that will appear on earth. It will be different from all the other kingdoms and will devour the whole earth, trampling it down and crushing it. The 10 horns are 10 kings who will come from this kingdom. After them, another king will arise, different from the earlier ones. He will subdue 3 kings. He will speak against the Most High and oppress his holy people and try to change the set times and laws. Now, interestingly enough, when the Mahdi comes back, his one main job is to implement Sharia law. The holy people will be delivered into his hands for a time, times, and half a time. Now, I want to show you this quick video of what Islam says is going to happen right before the Mahdi appears.
3 sons of a Khalifa will fight amongst you at your treasures, for your treasures. What treasure is this? There will be a treasure of the Ummah. Oil, natural resource, Allah knows best. There will be a treasure belonging to the Ummah. And 3 sons of a Khalifa, 3 princes. So 3 sons of a Khalifa will fight one another. So these are within the Ummah. This is the internal civil war that we talked about. And none of them will be victorious. And then the black flags will come from Khurasan, and then the Mahdi, and then the hadith goes on. And what this hadith shows is that the Mahdi will come at a time when the Muslim Ummah itself is internally fighting. And the Mahdi will unify the Ummah from within.
If you caught what was just said, God told us in Daniel's dream that out of the 10 kings that give their power to the Antichrist, 3 will be subdued. And in Islam, they believe that there will be internal fighting before the Mahdi shows up and 3 princes will be subdued. You see, Satan knows Scripture and he twists it to get the Muslims and Jews to fight one another. Just another comparison to note. But if we look at King Nebuchadnezzar's dream of the statue in Daniel 2, I want to remind you that every prophecy scholar says that the legs are Rome, the Roman Empire, and the feet is a revised Roman Empire. But what does Rome have to do with the book of Genesis? The end of the book needs to be a completion of the beginning. And the problem I have right now is half of the church believes Islam is a great Abrahamic faith, which it is not, because in it, it's the biggest Antichrist faith that the world will ever know or see. 7 times a day, Muslims pray that God is not a father and does not have a son. That is the spirit of Antichrist. And the other half of the church says that Islam is going to be wiped out and a new religion with a one world government will come to play. So no one from the church actually has their eye on Islam. Now, this dream, the statue dream, was specifically given to Nebuchadnezzar, and it's about the kingdoms that will follow his. The problem is that Rome was more westward, and it never really crushed Babylon. And the dream was given to Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon. He was the ruler of Babylon. So Rome was nation building. It preserved art, culture, writings. But in Neb's dream, the last kingdom of iron will break and smash everything. Now, this is a perfect description of Islam. The last kingdom, the feet, the revived empire, is said to be a mixture, and that the people will be a mixture. And the word Arab, which you can see in the Strong's Concordance, means mixture, to mix. Remember, Esau, Ishmael, Abraham's other son, they all intermarried. But Isaac and Jacob, their line needed to stay pure for the promise, and that is why you read all about Jesus' lineage, genealogy. So what I'm trying to point out here is that the feet and clay will be a mixture. The people will be a mixture and will not remain united. They're going to be Arab descent. So it's not going to be a revived Roman Empire. I believe it's going to be a revived Ottoman Empire, and I will explain more in the next slides. On this slide, you're going to see 4 different kingdoms. On the top left is the Roman Empire. In the pink, you can see that was the Roman Empire at its height. The red dot is where King Nebuchadnezzar would have received his dream. That's the area where Babylon was about. Now, you can see Rome was westward, and in this map, it doesn't even show that it ever conquered Babylon. It did conquer Babylon for about 3 months, and then the leader had a stroke, and it recoiled back never to conquer that area again. If you look directly below that, you will see Babylon. That's the Babylonian Empire when Nebuchadnezzar got his dream. The Roman Empire maybe covers perhaps 1/4 to 1/3 of the Babylonian Empire. It didn't crush Babylon, and it didn't even cover the city of Babylon where the dream was given. Roman Empire doesn't fit. This king was given to Nebuchadnezzar. The lower right is the Persian Empire, and you can see it covered Persia, and then the one up above is Greece. Now, we know that the lion, the leopard, and bear is what we're supposed to be looking for, right? So that territory is going to be in a revived caliphate. I believe that is going to be a Muslim kingdom that comes back and is the feet in the statue, and is also the body of the beast kingdom in Revelation, and is also, again, what we saw in Daniel's 4 beast dreams. It's that territory. The Lord is saying, look here, this is where the Antichrist comes out of. Now, the map in this picture is the Ottoman Empire at its height. And you can, if you look up from Baghdad, that area, that would have been where Babylon was, where Nebuchadnezzar got his dream. It was conquered. In present day, Persia is Muslim. So in Daniel 2:35, it talks about, then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold in Daniel's statue dream broken to pieces together at the same time, and became like chaff of the summer threshing floor. And the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain. Now, mountains can mean kingdoms and filled the whole earth. So why does the statue break together at the same time? It does because the final kingdom will be a composite of Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greek empires, and then the legs and the feet, which is the caliphate, and the caliphate coming back. Revelations 13:2 repeats this. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard, which was Greece, feet of a bear, which was Medo-Persia, and mouth like a lion, Babylon. The Lord is saying, this is the location that the final beast kingdom will be, and the Antichrist will come out of this kingdom. All right, let's bring it all together. In Revelations 7 through 14, it's the story of the harlot that sits on the beast, and the angel will give the interpretation of what the beast is. So starting on 7, it says this, Then the angel said to me, Why are you astonished? I will explain to you the mystery of the woman and of the beast she rides, which has 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast which you saw once was, now is not, and yet will come up out of the abyss and go to its destruction. The inhabitants of the earth, whose names have not been written in the book of life from the creation of the world, will be astonished when they see the beast, because it once was, now is not, and yet will come again. This calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains. Now I'm going to pause here. Remember, in Daniel, the statue dream, there's the mountain of God, the rock gets cut out of it, it comes down, hits the statue at its feet, and turns into a mountain. Kingdom of God, the rock is Jesus. When it hits the statue, it becomes a messianic kingdom. So mountains can mean kingdoms. Also, if you have faith like a mustard seed, you can move mountains, you can move kingdoms. So it's kingdoms on which the woman sits. They are also 7 kings. Kings rule kingdoms. In Daniel, the beast dream, the angel said the 4th kingdom was going to be a king and a kingdom. Here's the interpretation of that. 5 have fallen. 5 kingdoms. 5 of those heads on the beast. One is, at the time of the writing, when John wrote this, the one that is was Rome. The other has not yet come. That would be the 7th. That would be the Ottoman Empire. But when he does come, he must remain for a little while. The beast who once was, which is the Ottoman, and now is not, is an 8th king. That's because it's a revived caliphate that comes back. And the 8th king is the Antichrist. He belongs to the 7 and is going to his destruction. The 10 horns you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but for 1 hour will receive authority as kings along with the beast, because the beast is a king and a kingdom. They have one purpose and will give their power and authority to the beast. They will wage war against the Lamb, but the Lamb will triumph over them, because he is the Lord of lords and King of kings, and with him will be called chosen and faithful followers. The 7th head, it was and then is not, and comes back with an 8th king. It suffered a head wound. In Revelation 13, we will see that the beast suffers a head wound. That head wound happened in 1923 with the Treaty of Lausanne. It abolished the caliphate, and in 1924, the office of caliph was also abolished. After 100 years, that treaty expires, and the caliphate can now reform as a kingdom. In this chart, I have the empires, Daniel's statue dream, the animal dream, and Revelations, the mountain dreams, all broken down. In Daniel 2, the statue dream, Egypt and Assyria is not included. They're not included in the animal dream, but they are included in the mountains or the head in Revelation 17. Babylon is the head of gold, it is the lion, it is the third head. Medo-Persia is the chest and arms of silver, it is the bear, it is the fourth head. Grecian is the fifth one, it's the belly and thigh of bronze, it is the leopard, it is the fifth head. Rome was the one at the time that is. It was the sixth head. It's not included in the statue dream, it's not included in the animal dream, but it is the sixth head in the mountain dream. The seventh head is the Islamic Ottoman Empire. It was the legs of iron. It is the fourth beast. It crushes and leaves no residue behind. And seventh head, Islam conquered all the regions of the lion, the leopard, and the bear, and that's a prerequisite. The lion, the leopard, and bear will be in the return of the caliphate. So the last empire is going to be a healed head wound. It's the revived caliphate. It's the feet of iron and clay. You have the 10 horns that grow out of the fourth beast. It is the healed seventh head wound with the eighth king. And then the final kingdom is the messianic. It is the rock. It is Jesus. It is the kingdom of heaven come to earth. Is there any evidence for what I'm trying to tell you? Yes, there is. In 2009, this book was published, and they did a program about where Turkey wants to reconnect the caliphate by the year 2050. You can see on the map there, on this report, that would be the areas of the lion, the leopard, and the bear. Now, we're going to watch a video of an Islamic cleric talking about end times. And let's see, do they want to conquer Jerusalem?
How do you survive this darkest night which is still ahead of us? And how do you continue to participate in the jihad for the liberation of the Holy Land, because that jihad has already started? We don't need any fatwa. Oh no. And no one can stop that jihad. No one can stop that jihad. That jihad is not going to end in any peace treaty in Oslo, or in Madrid, or in downtown Washington. No, no, no. That jihad will culminate when Dajjal is killed by the true Messiah, when Gog and Magog are killed, destroyed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then said the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, when you see the black flags coming from the direction of Khorasan, and Afghanistan is a part of Khorasan, go and join our army, because no one will be able to stop that army until it reaches Jerusalem. A Muslim army now liberates the Holy Land. The state of Israel is destroyed, because Allah said, وَإِنْ عُدْتُمْ عُدْنَا. And so the warning of Allah has come to pass. And the Islamic State now replaces that imposter Israel. And that Islamic State will now become the ruling state in the world. The definition of a ruling state being a state which can impose its will on any rival. And Islam will rule the world from Jerusalem. The Messiah will rule the world from Jerusalem. Imam al-Mahdi will live for 7 years and then die, and this is my topic for a few days from now. Imam al-Mahdi and the return of the Khilafah.
So where is it that we go wrong? Because there's a lot of brilliant prophecy scholars that are stuck that it is Rome. And in Daniel 9:26, in that passage, the Antichrist is referred to as the prince who is to come, and he is identified as being from the people who will destroy the city and the sanctuary. Rome was in charge when the orders were given to destroy the temple. However, Rome was fat and lazy, and they had locals do it. They had locals in their legion. Legion 10, which is the most significant one for tearing down the Temple Mount itself and the base, this one was from Turkey and Syria. And you can see all of these are Middle Eastern. So it is the people who will destroy the city and the sanctuary. And that makes sense because the Antichrist has titles that we will look at on the next slide. He is called the Assyrian. He's called the Prince of Tyre, the King of Babylon, Pharaoh of Egypt, Gog of Magog. These are all locations of his rule that he will be in. The Assyrian. I will crush the Assyrian in my land. On my mountains I will trample him down. His yoke will be taken from my people, his burden removed from their shoulders. Isaiah 14:25. Prince of Tyre, Lebanon. Son of man, give the Prince of Tyre this message from the sovereign Lord. In your great pride you claim, I am a god. I sit on a divine throne in the heart of the sea. But you are only a man and not a god, though you boast that you are a god. Ezekiel 28:2. Lebanon shall fall by the mighty one. Isaiah 10:34. The king of Babylon, and it will be in the day when the Lord gives you rest from your pain and turmoil, which would be Israel, and harsh service in which you have been enslaved, that you will take up this taunt against the king of Babylon and say, how the oppressor has ceased and how fury has ceased. The Lord has broken the staff of the wicked, the scepter of rulers. Pharaoh of Egypt, O Egypt, to which of these trees of Eden will you compare your strength and glory? You too will be brought down to the depths with all these other nations. You will lie there among the outcast who have died by the sword. This will be the fate of Pharaoh and all his hordes. I, the sovereign Lord, have spoken. Ezekiel 31:18. Notice there is no Russia, there is no Rome, there is no Pope listed. These are all Muslim countries that surround Israel. Now finally we come to Revelation 13, the beast, which every prophecy scholar says this is just the Antichrist. But if you read that first paragraph as that this is the kingdom, and the second paragraph as this is the king, because remember in Daniel, the animal dream, it said that the angel says this is a kingdom and a king. So let's look at this. The dragon stood on the shore of the sea, and I saw a beast coming out of the sea. It had 10 horns and 7 heads, and we know what those 7 heads are, with 10 crowns on its horn, and on each head a blasphemous name. The beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear and mouth like a lion. Remember, the body, he's saying location of the beast. The dragon, Satan, gave the beast his power and his throne and great authority. This is a kingdom. One of the heads of the beast seemed to have had a fatal wound, Ottoman Empire, but the fatal wound had been healed. That's what I believe is next in the prophecy time frame. Look for the caliphate to come back. The whole world was filled with wonder and followed the beast. People worshipped the dragon because he had given authority to the beast, and they also worshipped the beast and asked, who is like the beast? This is the beast kingdom. Who can wage war against it? Who can wage war against this kingdom? In Islam, there is worship. The final caliph is the leader of the caliphate, and you are ordered in their governmental system to worship him. It's the Bayah pledge. Now, for the king part, the beast was given a mouth to utter proud words. This would be the Antichrist, and the blasphemies, and to exercise its authority for 42 months. It opened its mouth to blaspheme God and to slander his name and his dwelling place and those who live in heaven. It was given power to wage war against God's holy people and to conquer them. And it was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. Now, this kingdom is going to rule over 10 kings. 3 of them become subdued. It's a specific region. It's where the lion, the leopard, and the bear is. But how does it have authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation? Well, there is another beast kingdom. It's called the land beast, and it's also a kingdom. And that kingdom will have authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation also. And it will give its power and authority over to this beast, the Antichrist. They will work together in the end to destroy the covenant. And I will break this down. Now, all inhabitants of the earth will worship the beast, the Antichrist, whose name has not been written in the Lamb's book of life, the Lamb who was slain from the creation of the world. That's a lot of people. Therefore prophesy and say, this is what the sovereign Lord says, because they ravaged and crushed you from every side, this is talking about Israel, so that you became the possession of the rest of the nations and the object of people's malicious talk and slander, which we can already see they're doing that with Israel right now. Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says, I swear with uplifted hand, the nations around you will also suffer scorn. Therefore say to the Israelites, this is what the sovereign Lord says. It is not for your sake, people of Israel, that I am going to do these things, but for the sake of my holy name. Again, Genesis 15, Abraham is put to sleep. God enters the covenant by himself. It's for his holy name that he will complete this. Now he says, which you have profaned among the nations where you have gone. Many people say, well, that's already happened, because then the next verse says, for I will take you out of the nations. I will gather you from all countries and bring you back to your own land. That's already happened. No, it hasn't. This is the final time that they get pushed out, because the very next verse says, I will sprinkle clean water on you and you will be clean. I will cleanse you from all your impurities and from all your idols. I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. This does not happen until they see the one that they have pierced. That's when there is a spiritual rebirth of Israel. So this is the final time that Israel gets pushed out of the land. Half go into protection, the other half go into death or exile into other nations. He brings them back. Now, Ezekiel 32 talks about the nations who go into the pit. And we know that in Joel, he takes the nations to the valley of Jehoshaphat to judge them. And the nations that go into the pit, according to Ezekiel 32, are Egypt, Assyria, Elam, which is Persia, Meshech and Tubal, Turkey, Edom, Saudi Arabia. These are not European. This is not Russia. This is a reformed caliphate. There's no other way to look at it. So that was the sea beast in Revelations 13. And if we compare the two beast systems, we know that the sea beast has a specific area. The lion, the leopard, the bear is where the Antichrist will come out of. There are 10 kings with 10 horns. We know that 3.5 years into the peace agreement, it is broken, and he is allowed, the beast, the king of the caliphate, is allowed to wage war on the Jews and to conquer them. It worships the beast. It has blasphemies, and it comes out of the sea, just like in Daniel's dream. They all came out of the sea, those kingdoms. But then there's another beast, and we are always told that this beast is merely the false prophet. But I'm telling you, this beast is more than just the false prophet. It is the land beast, and there is no specific location. There is no borders. It just says it covers the land. There is no king listed, but there are 2 horns. There's no time frame of its rule. This beast system could come before the other one. It made the earth worship the first beast and conquer Christians. There's fire that comes from heaven. It forces the mark. It comes out of the earth. Who could this be? I'm going to read about the land beast first, and then I will break it down on the next slide of what I think it is. But Revelations 13:11 says this, Then I saw another beast coming out of the earth. It had 2 horns like those of a lamb, but it spoke like a dragon. It exercises all the authority of the first beast in its presence, and it makes the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, the one whose fatal wound had been healed. It performs great miracles, even causing fire to come down from heaven onto the earth as people watch. It deceives the people living on the earth by the miracles it is allowed to perform in the presence of the beast, and it tells them to make an image honoring the beast that was struck by the sword and came alive again. It was allowed to put breath into the image of the beast so that the image of the beast could even speak, and it was allowed to cause anyone who would not worship the image of the beast to be put to death. Also, it forces everyone, great, small, rich, poor, free, slave, to receive a mark on his right hand or on his forehead, preventing anyone from buying or selling unless he has the mark. That is the name of the beast or the number of its name. This is where wisdom is needed. Those who understand should count the number of the beast, for it is a number of a person, and that number is 666. Let's break it down. I believe this land beast is a global government system. It covers the land. It doesn't have a direct location like the sea beast. This is a global government system. It has 2 horns. The sea beast derived its power from 10 kingdoms with 10 kings that give authority to the beast. This global government system is different. It has 2 horns that are not kingdoms, and they have no crown. I believe the 2 hedge funds that will own everything in the world by 2030, which are Vanguard and BlackRock, and the elites use those hedge funds as their weapons, are the 2 horns, and they have no king. This is ran like a corporation and has a computer system named Aladdin that makes decisions without human interference that has been buying all the assets. Now, Aladdin runs every Federal Reserve bank and almost every trade on the stock market, and it gathers information on what we buy and sell off of Amazon, and it gathers that data to form a social credit score on you. Now, the word Aladdin is supposed to stand for assets, liabilities, debt, and derivatives in network, but the name in Arabic means faithful servant to Allah. Well, what does that name have to do with the mark of the beast? Why would that be an AI system? Could we all be connected to that to become faithful servants of Allah? Now, this land beast exercises all the authority of the first beast, which would be, if you look back, it was given power to wage war against God's holy people and to conquer them, and it was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. Again, I believe this kingdom will give that authority over to the Antichrist. The land beast will make the earth worship the first beast, which is the caliphate, the caliph, the Mahdi, the Antichrist. Inside Islam, in their constitution, is what's called the Bay'ah Pledge. When the last caliph comes, they are required to worship him. It's not an option. If they don't, they become an apostate, and apostate means death. So they will be forced to worship. This land beast will help that. It's very similar to the pledge that Hitler, in World War II, remember the churches took down the cross and put Hitler's pictures up? The land beast will perform miracles, causing fire to come down from heaven. They have the ability to do that with direct energy weapons right now. And I believe that they're going to do that for the purpose of deceiving the inhabitants of Earth. I believe this kingdom will use the technology to perform miracles on behalf of the false prophet to deceive the earth. This land beast is also referred to as the Lamb. There's an element of false prophet that they will lift up. And that false prophet will turn around and say, if it's Islam, he'll say, don't worship me, worship that guy. The land beast will put breath into the image of the sea beast. Now this breath could be like the breath that put the dry bones together in Ezekiel. It is the breath that resurrects a dead nation. I believe the UN will put breath back into the caliphate so it can reform for the purpose of coming against Israel in an attempt to break the covenant in Genesis 15. It will give the Antichrist the ability to speak on the world stage. Remember, Israel was resurrected by breath. Satan mimics God. I believe he's going to do the same thing to resurrect the caliphate through the United Nations. The land beast will force everyone to receive the mark of the beast, which is a name or a number. This could be done before the sea beast is even formed. It's a name, it's a creed, it's something anti-Christ in nature. We know Bill Gates has a 060606 cryptocurrency patent, earning cryptocurrency with body activity. If you take a mark and you have to earn that and you go through the cloud, and on the other side of the cloud is a computer system that says that you're a faithful servant of Allah, you would have a number and a name. Something to look out for in the future.
So I discovered the mosque when I was in London once, and it may seem funny that I was in London and discovered a mosque in Germany, but I was in this bookstore that sold radical Islamist literature, and there was a map on the wall of the world, and surrounding the map were all the famous mosques of the world. And there was mosques in Saudi Arabia and in Turkey and so on, and there was the Islamic Center of Munich among these mosques. And I thought, that's really strange. Why would the Islamic Center of Munich, which is certainly not the biggest mosque in Germany, it's not the oldest mosque in Germany, I'd heard of it, but it was not really a major mosque. Why would that mosque be among this pantheon of the world's most famous mosques? So I began to ask around, and I found out that the Islamic Center of Munich was the first overseas mosque of the Muslim Brotherhood. It has a whole cast of characters that, to me, exemplify how Western society has tried to make use of Islam. And I say make use of Islam in a bad way, instrumentalize Islam for its own short-term political purposes. The mosque's history goes back actually to World War II, when the Nazis had a plan to use Muslims to counter the Soviet Union. They were using Muslims for anti-Soviet propaganda. Some of these people ended up in Munich after the war, And then the second phase started when Western intelligence began to say, hey, we can also use these people to bash the Soviet Union. So they essentially hired them as covert propaganda experts. You have to remember, at this time, the United States was involved in what it saw as a life and death struggle against communism. The Third World was just coming into existence. Countries that once had been colonies of Britain and France and other countries were becoming independent. And nobody knew where these countries were going to go. If they all went into the communist camp, the US would have been pretty isolated around the world, and especially in strategically important areas of the Middle East. If this sounds sort of familiar to today's politics, it's not a coincidence, because in essence, this story is a precursor to a lot of what has gone on. It's a microcosm to how we've tried to use Islam for, I think, short-term political purposes.
Now, in the 1970s, the global elites manipulated the Middle East in what was called the Ark of Crisis. I did a video regarding this. I'm going to show you a quick excerpt of that video. But manipulation through fear is how these two teams work. So do you think that 9/11 could have been planned to get Patriot Act in to push us into higher surveillance without us pushing back? Could have. Now, the first attack on the Third World came in the form of a premeditated massive rise in oil prices in connection with the Yom Kippur War of 1973. Economies cannot develop without an energy supply, and the quadrupling of energy prices was a major setback to nations like India, Brazil, Pakistan, Indonesia, and Mexico. Then the President Bhutto of Pakistan tried to work around the situation by developing nuclear energy. Kissinger threatened him, saying, "We will make an example out of you." The Shah of Iran, even though his nation had an abundant supply of oil, also began a program to develop nuclear energy. Both leaders were quickly eliminated. With the rise in energy prices, the development of the Third World was checked, but the Arab Middle East became greatly enriched. This was when the globalists turned to their allies, the Islamists, to remedy the situation. Islam would be used to attack industrialization and modernization, using the lie that human progress was un-Islamic and a Western plot against the servant of Allah. The real plot was actually aimed at the brown-skinned masses of the Middle East who were briefly experiencing a positive change in their quality of life in terms of education, employment, shelter, sanitation, and nutrition. However, the religious and intellectual advocates of ignorance, filth, and violence joined forces to throw the prosperous Middle East back into the Dark Ages. Their explosion of violence throughout the Middle East in the late 70s and early 80s was referred to as the Ark of Crisis. It was not something that occurred by chance, but it was in fact the result of deliberate plan developed by globalist strategists like Dr. Alexander King, Henry Kissinger, Brzezinski, and British operative Dr. Bernard Lewis. The Middle Eastern Ark of Crisis was not a spontaneous internal conflagration. It was something that came about as a result of Western policy in the league with Muslim Brotherhood. Without the help from the West, radical Islam would have remained the illegitimate repressive minority movement that it has always been, and the Middle East would have remained stable and prosperous. Robert Dreyfus summarized the nature of the Muslim Brotherhood organization in a few paragraphs in a book that he wrote in 1980. He said, "The real Muslim Brotherhood is not the fanatical sheikh with his equally fanatical following, nor is it even the top mullahs and ayatollahs who lead entire movements of such madmen like Khomeini, Gaddafi, General Z, are exquisitely fashioned puppets. The real Muslim Brotherhood are those whose hands are never dirtied with the business of killing and burning. They are the secretive bankers and financiers who stand behind the curtain, the members of the old Arab, Turkish, or Persian families whose genealogy places them in the oligarchy elite, with smooth businesses and intelligence association to the European black nobility and especially to the British oligarchy. And the Muslim Brotherhood is money. By allying the Muslim Brotherhood, the Anglo-Americans are not merely buying into a terrorist for hire racket. They are partners in a powerful and world financial empire that extend from numbered Swiss bank accounts to offshore havens, Dubai, Kuwait, and Hong Kong." So here is one last video with Jay Dyer, and he talks about how these societies, these entities work together sometimes to manipulate one another. And in it, he mentions that the globalists may not all be Muslims, but in secret societies like the Illuminati, Freemasons, Knight Templars, I will show you how they hold a very high regard for Islam and only call God by the name of Allah in these societies.
In the West, we don't really have religion as a cohesive idea anymore in terms of an actual expression. There's a loose idea that we're either Protestant or Catholic in the West, but there's no real civic function of the religion. The religion doesn't spill over any longer into the civic sphere because we bought into the idea of a secular society, and the religion is something that's private and it doesn't really relate to anything else. And that's precisely why we will eventually collapse and die. Now, I think Islam is a terrible religion. I've debated all the top Muslims except for one out there that are known, that are famous, that are public. I go against it all the time, but it has the focus and the impetus to take over in Europe and perhaps even in America in the near future, because human beings cannot subsist and will not last very long in a completely secular atheist society. They will bend to whatever is the dominant masculine force, and Islam, although I think it's a horrible false religion, has that impetus still within it. So it will take over Europe, and that's by design. The Fabian socialists talked about in the 1910s, 20s, and 30s, bringing in Islam first to London and then to the UK and then into Europe because they thought it could be a force for socialism. They were too full of hubris, I think, to realize that, no, you're not going to control this religion. This religion will take over. You might get a few generations of degenerate children of Muslims, but eventually Islam will take over Europe, and that's by design. And it's not because the global elite are Muslims. They're not Muslims. It's a chess piece, right? It's an ideological chess piece. So chess pieces are not just nation states. It's not just this nation, Ukraine, and let's use them against. It's ideology and religion as well.
So that now leads me to this. In 1950, somewhere around that time, a letter from Albert Pike to Mazzini, who he was one of the leaders of the Illuminati, was supposedly found where he talked about the plan for 3 world wars. Now, this letter supposedly was back in the early, say, 1870s or so. But since it wasn't found out till 1950s, we don't know if it's a real letter or if it was fabricated. And my guess, it was fabricated to make it look like Albert Pike had the gift of prophecy. But regardless, it's not too hard to figure out World War I and World War II after 1950. But World War III, what he states here is where I think the Illuminati is taking this. And World War III says this: the Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agentur of the Illuminati between political Zionists and leaders of the Islamic world. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam, the Muslim Arabic world, and political Zionism, the State of Israel, mutually destroy each other. Now, what would that do? If you pit the descendants of Abraham against one another, it would destroy the covenant in Genesis 15. And if you annihilated every descendant of Abraham, that would make sure that that could never, never happen again. That there could never be where God could fulfill that. Meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on the issue, will be constrained to fight to the point of complete physical, moral, and spiritual and economical exhaustion. We shall unleash the nihilist and the atheist, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm, which in all its horror will show clearly to the nations the effect of absolute atheism, origin of savagery, and of the most bloody turmoil. Then everywhere the citizens, obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries. Now, pause. What are they doing right now? Worldwide, they're bringing in immigrants, giving them a card with $10,000 on it, and they are training them to be faithful followers to them. They will be the revolutionaries. We'll exterminate those destroyers of civilization. I highlighted that because I've seen that exact language in Muslim terminology, and that is usually meaning the Christians. And the multitude, disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will be from that moment without compass or direction, anxious for an ideal but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out in public view. This manifestation will result from the general reactionary movement which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time. Why? Because Lucifer will be worshipped. So, same dragon, working with 2 different entities here, and they will unite together. And the end goal is really, if you look at this spiritually, the end goal is to destroy Genesis 15. So how do you provoke a war? Inside Islamic prophecy is the destroying of Israel. And so to provoke a war, all you have to do is make Islamic prophecies become true. The Illuminati, I believe, is provoking by helping Islamic prophecy be fulfilled. And one way I can say that I'm pretty sure that that's happening is the $85 billion in military equipment that we left in Afghanistan. Afghanistan is ancient Khorasan, and ancient Khorasan is where the Islamic prophecy hadith says that the famous hadith of the black banners from Khorasan will come, and the Mahdi will be with them with an army who will march on Jerusalem and erect the black flag on the Temple Mount. We just provided $85 billion in military equipment for that to come true. We also see that the U.S. is throwing Israel under the bus right now. We finance both sides. We allow Iran to get nuclear weapons. We leave $85 billion in military equipment. We give money to Israel. The goal is for them to annihilate each other. Another famous hadith in Islam is this. It says, the Prophet said, the hour of judgment will not come until the Muslims fight the Jews and kill them. It will not come until the Jews hide behind rocks and trees. It will not come until the rocks or trees say, O Muslim, O servant of God, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him. All the New World has to do to eliminate Jews is to make the Islamic prophecies come true. And then they'd have a standing army against the Jews. And so Project Bluebeam, when I realized what it was, I realized, I think this is Satan's play. This would unite the world under one religion, under one government system. So I'm going to let the video that actually woke me up, I had to edit it. This whole video is probably a half an hour long. I edited it for the main theme, but I want you to watch this next video on Project Bluebeam.
Your world is not as it seems. Everything you know to be true is a lie. Hidden behind the facade of our everyday lives is a secret and powerful organization with a dangerous agenda to manipulate the minds of the masses and usher in a new world order. They call this program Project Bluebeam. If the program is successful, we won't see it coming. Borders between nations will be dissolved. All religions will be dismantled. And technology will be turned against us. Serge Benast was a mysterious and controversial figure. Born in Quebec in 1945, he was an investigative journalist who became weary of the direction in which society was headed. He believed that there was a secret cabal of powerful elites who were controlling the world behind the scenes. In other words, the Illuminati. Serge Benast was determined to expose these elites, even when his life was in danger. In 1994, he released his book Project Bluebeam, which outlines the plan to create a one-world government and a new world order. In the first stage of the project, we'll see a breakdown of all archaeological knowledge, and this is done by creating artificial earthquakes. These earthquakes would be at strategically placed locations around the globe. At these locations, new discoveries will be made that will show that religions have been misunderstood and misinterpreted for centuries. This would allow science to discredit all religious doctrines. Project Bluebeam capitalizes on that kind of doubt. It's designed to cause a crisis of faith. People in crisis will be more likely to accept the New Age religion. As for earthquakes, these can be artificially created by mining or fracking in the right location. And the frequency and severity of earthquakes has been increasing over the past 20 years. Phase 2 of Project Bluebeam is what Menas called the space show. 3D holographic images and sounds will be projected from a network of satellites. These satellites will use lasers to project images down to Earth. These images will be designed to seduce people into believing in a new god. Holograms and augmented reality is getting better and better every year. The image seen and language heard will be different in different parts of the world, according to what religion is most dominant in the area. Then all the different deities from all the world's religions will merge into one. Now, earthquakes and religious artifacts will be enough to convert some people to this new religion. Giant deities appearing and then converging into one antichrist will convert a lot more people. But these technologies won't work on everybody. Non-religious people will be terrified, sure, but they won't suddenly believe in God based on a hologram, no matter how real it looks. To get the entire planet to adopt a new religion and a one-world government, people need to come to this decision themselves. If seeing a hologram of the message isn't enough, Project Bluebeam will broadcast the message directly into our brains. And that technology is available everywhere in the world, right now.
So again, this idea of being able to put sound anywhere you want to is really starting to catch on. We've got the military had just deployed some of these into Iraq where you can put fake troop movements a quarter of a mile away on a hillside. Or you can whisper in the ear of a supposed terrorist some biblical verse. I'm serious.
The goal of Project Bluebeam is to get the entire planet to adopt a single religion and then a single government. And this will happen in 4 steps. Step 1 is to use artificial earthquakes and archaeological discoveries to discredit existing religions. Step 2 is through holograms, augmented reality, and AI to make people believe that a new god has arrived to replace all existing gods. Step 3 is mind control using microwave. These electromagnetic waves are all around us all the time. Step 4 is the most insidious of all. It describes how Project Bluebeam will create a fake disaster or crisis that will bring the world together. But not through hope or through peace. The world will come together through fear. This event will be so frightening that people will no longer care about their religion or their national or cultural identity. They'll be so scared that they won't resist the one-world government, they'll beg for it. Menas gave a specific example of what Project Bluebeam would use to terrify the world, and it may already be happening. Project Bluebeam would stage a fake invasion of UFOs. Now, it's hard not to notice what's been happening with UFOs or UAPs over the last few years. For my entire life, UFOs were considered a fringe idea. Then whistleblowers like Bob Lazar started to emerge who claimed to have worked on UFOs at Area 51. Then we got reports from Navy pilots who claimed to see UFOs. Then we saw video. Then the government acknowledged that not only do UFOs exist, but they don't have any idea what they are. Since then, there are reports and images and video of objects in the skies all over the world. In addition to staging a fake alien invasion, Project Bluebeam will implement other programs to terrify the world's population into compliance. Now, Project Bluebeam will stage a divine intervention from Jesus to help save humanity from the alien invasion. Also during this time, electronic waves will be transmitted over every wire on Earth, and these waves will induce psychosis in a large number of people. This will cause a wave of violence so severe that the population will be ready to reestablish peace at any cost, even at the expense of personal freedom. Serge Benas said the architects will phase out cash and national currencies, replacing them with a single electronic currency. This sounds a lot like Bitcoin. Project Bluebeam has 4 specific goals: abolish religion, abolish pride in one's country, dissolve the family in favor of the state, and destroy individual creativity. If you don't see these things happening now, you're not paying attention. As you would expect, Serge Benas ruffled a lot of feathers when he revealed Project Bluebeam to the world. He claimed he was being watched and followed. In fact, in September 1996, his 2 homeschooled children were taken from him. He never saw them again. On December 4th, 1996, Serge Benas was arrested for spreading misinformation. He was questioned and spent the night in jail. The next day, he was found dead in his apartment. Even though he was in perfect health, the official report is he died of a heart attack at the age of 51. And so Serge Benas, the man who refused to be silenced, was finally silenced after all.
Project Bluebeam was exposed in the early 90s. At the time, the plan was to convert everyone to a New World religion. I believe that it won't be a New World religion, but it will be Islam that they will promote. Imagine if they faked the false prophet, the Lamb, which in Revelations 13 on the land beast, it mentions the Lamb. If Isa al-Masih, the Muslim Jesus, comes back, the Muslim Jesus is supposed to return from the sky between 2 angels with a yellow scarf. If the Muslims saw this, it would excite the Muslim world that Allah is God and that they would be commanded to fight the Jews. The land beast in Revelations 13:12 exercised all the authority of the first beast on its behalf and made the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast. And that's exactly what the false prophet will do in Islam. In Islam, he literally stands behind the Mahdi and says, "Do not follow me, follow him." The New World Order is the technological arm that has the ability to pull this grand deception off and has been moving us towards this for 30 years with their transhumanism, voice-to-skull, EMF waves. The system is already set up for control. They just have to manipulate us onto it, like 9/11, where we accept it. The first step in Project Bluebeam is an archaeological find to disprove Christianity. The Mahdi, he is called the guided one in Islam because he guides to something that is hidden. So he's also supposed to find something like the Ark of the Covenant or something to pull Jews and Christians towards him in a specific location, Turkey. So there is overlap between these ideologies, which makes me go, that's Satan's play. I believe this could be the deception that could fool even the elect if it were possible.
You know, the whole idea that humans have, you know, this soul or spirit and they have free will and nobody knows what's happening inside me. So whatever I choose, whether in the election or whether in the supermarket, this is my free will, that's over. Today, we have the technology to hack human beings on a massive scale. Yeah, I mean, everything is being digitalized. Everything is being monitored. People could look back in 100 years and identify the coronavirus epidemic as the moment when a new regime of surveillance took over, especially surveillance under the skin, which I think is maybe the most important development of the 21st century, is this ability to hack human beings, to go under the skin, collect biometric data, analyze it, and understand people better than they understand themselves is maybe the most important event of the 21st century. By hacking organisms, elites may gain the power to re-engineer the future of life itself. Because once you can hack something, you can usually also engineer it. In the coming decades, AI and biotechnology will give us godlike abilities to re-engineer life and even to create completely new life forms. We are about to enter a new era of inorganic life shaped by intelligent design. Our intelligent design.
Yuval speaks that free will is over and that we are now hackable. And he says animals. We're not. We're not hackable animals, but we are hackable. They have been promoting this as telemedicine. If you look into it, where they will be able to remote into you for your health purposes. Everyone is part of what's called the Y-band system, the wireless body area network. And we aren't able to get off the grid. We are the grid, and the electrical energy for the grid. That is why I believe we are closer than most people know. He is not lying to you where technology is. And most prophecy scholars will tell you that a war will take place and Islam will be wiped out, and then a man from Europe or Russia will gather everyone for a one world religion. But it would take generations to wipe Islam out of the minds of Muslims, and we don't have it. The transhumanism is here. The mark is here. AI is here. Even the red heifers are here. And they are bio-digitally converging people. You can go to the Augmenting Human Conference. They are destroying the image of God in us. That is their plan. When he says free will is over, I can't imagine that the Lord will allow this to go on much longer. They are trying to create mindless human beings without free will to go against God, to gather us against him in battle. In the book Supernatural, Dr. Michael Heiser states, page 35, recall that God decided to share his authority with both divine beings in the supernatural realm and human beings on earth. That was the backdrop to God's statement of let us make humankind in our image. And the fact that God then created humans in his image. Spiritual beings and humans are imagers of God. We share his authority and represent him as co-rulers. On one hand, that was a wonderful decision. Free will is part of being like God. We couldn't be like him if we didn't have it. Without free will, concepts like love and self-sacrifice die. If you are merely programmed to love, there is no decision in it. That was from his book. The New World Order is marketing this as an upgrade, that we will be like God, but we are already made in his image. Taking away free will is not God, it's Satan. And if you take the mark, you will become an abomination to God's creation, and you will no longer be salvageable. You won't have free will anymore, bottom line. Remember when I said that societies like Freemasons and Shriners love Islam? Well, for one, these have worked together before in the past. Mein Kampf is bestseller in Muslim countries. The Muslim Brotherhood, whose one stated goal to reconstruct the caliphate, the kingdom that would bring back the Mahdi, which I believe is the Antichrist, worked with Hitler. It's Freemasonry for the Muslims. Obama invited the Muslim Brotherhood to sit in the front row in his speech in Cairo, which helped kick off the Arab Spring. And again, we left $85 billion in military equipment in Afghanistan so that they can complete their famous hadith of the Mahdi marching onto Israel with an army. So in the book Freemasonry, Ancient Egypt, and Islamic Destiny, page 22, it says, history also tells us that Western world received its burst of scientific enlightenment from the Islamic world of the East, from the Holy Quran. And Elon Musk had said the same thing at the World Government meeting in 2013. According to Shriners' wisdom, each Shriner travels east to worship at the shrine of Islam in Mecca. Why would the Shriners worship at the shrine in Mecca? Allah revealed the great truths, the so-called higher sciences, to a common mortal man, the Prophet Muhammad, in this book. This speaks to the excellence of human nature. It shows that God doesn't have to die on a cross in order to save humanity. You see, the elites have received occult knowledge through Islam, and it has benefited them greatly. They know where their bread is buttered, and Allah or Satan has put them at the head of the food chain, and they are thankful, and they know where their allegiance lies. In that book, it also says, in order to become a Shriner, one has to be a 32nd degree Mason or Knights Templar. The reader should keep in mind that those who become Shriners are more exposed directly to the teaching of the Islamic religion. In fact, the mystic shrine refers to the Kaaba that is located in Mecca. The Shriners, like the Muslim, refer to the Creator by the name Allah, which is his proper name according to this book. Prior to becoming a Shriner, the Masons learn the various attributes of the Creator. He is most often referred to by the Freemasons as the Grand Architect of the universe. The Shriner's oath ends with these words, "May Allah, the God of the Arabs, the Muslims, and Muhammad, and the God of our fathers support me to the entire fulfillment of the same." The Freemasons' altar is covered with a black cloth with the Bible and what they call the Holy Quran and a black stone upon it. There is 2 swords on the altar. And there is also 2 swords on their red fez that they wear and the crescent moon. You see, these 2 organizations will serve the same God in the end, and that's Lucifer. And you have to recognize that. We are coming to a great battle, and it's over the minds and hearts of God's people. If you have not made a commitment to serve Jesus Christ, do not wait any longer. My last video that I'm going to show you is about a Muslim man who saw Jesus. And the only way that there will ever be healing in the land is through Jesus Christ. When a Muslim is touched by Jesus, they have a love for the Jews. And that is only through Jesus. If we want to partner with God in this, you pray that Muslims come to know him, because that's going to take the foot soldiers out of Satan's hand. And it's going to save the Jews, for more of them to see Jesus when he comes back. So God wants his creation to partner with him. And you can't partner with him if you don't know what the battle's about. So I hope that this presentation showed you what the battle is about. And watch this last video, and we're going to close with this. And I encourage you to share this video. We don't have much time left. If you got anything from this video, even if you want to discuss it with your pastor, share it with him. Like and share. I don't think I'll be doing many more of these. Share it while you can, because pretty soon we're not going to be able to.
You were born in Iran.
Correct.
You were a Hezbollah fighter for 3 years.
Correct. I was on my way to United States to convert Christians into Islam. And I had 30 illegal passports at that time. I was arrested, put in jail in Malaysia. I was a dedicated Muslim. Not only prayed the prayers, but I read the Quran once every 10 days, cover to cover. So I was very dedicated. In my time in jail, one day as I'm praying, a man appears in front of me, normal size, but his being shines like light. And this light was not a normal light. This light carried identity in it. You knew that he's holy and he's just. And instantaneously I knew I am not. Even though I had prayed so many prayers, even though I had fasted so much, and I had read the Quran, and I had volunteered to walk on landmines, or I had participated in hanging people, trying to please Allah, I knew, even though I have kept all the rules and regulation of Islam, I knew I'm not just and I'm not holy. And I knew the only just thing for him to do is to kill me. But I didn't want to die. So I ran to the corner of the room, literally held my head in my arms and just cried out, shouting, "Forgive me, forgive me, forgive me." And I didn't think he will forgive me because he is just, till I felt a touch on my left shoulder. And he said, "I forgive you." And I felt a weight just lifted off me. And I knew I'm forgiven, but I don't know how. And I was confused. I was like, okay, I don't understand. Only God can forgive you. Just forgive me. You are God. But you're a different God than the one I have studied about. This is not Allah. So who are you that forgives me and I feel forgiven today? And he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And I thought, that's very powerful. It means a lot, because as a Muslim, you pray, "Ihdina sirata mustaqim," show me the straight path, kind of thing. And so the way is a direction, truth is something you measure, life is a source. But he claims to be all those three. I never thought the way is a person, the truth is a person, and life is a person, and all of them is the same person. So I said, I don't understand. What is your name? And he said, Jesus Christ. And someone grabbed all my bones out of my body. It just fell like a piece of meat to the ground, and I just began to weep.
What changed after that?
It's like, being colorblind. And then suddenly you see colors again. And you realize the world is so much more beautiful than you ever thought. If you ask me what made the world so colorless, it's the hatred, the anger that is in the heart of every Muslim. I mean, people say, why did you hate the Jews? I had never met a Jew. And I thought Hitler was a good man for doing what he did. He just didn't finish the job. I don't know why I hated them. No Jew had ever done anything bad to me. God didn't design us to hate. Didn't design us to want to see someone dead. He did not design us for these things. These are design of Satan. How do you think killing the people that God gave them this land to is going to please Allah? The God of heaven, the God of Abraham and Moses, the God of their prophets and Jesus is not a God that celebrates when Jews are killed.
At the end of our interview, Afshin offered a prayer for those on both sides of the war in Israel.